Hello, and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's managing editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome!
How you doing, Tanya?
I'm doing lovely and feeling festive. How about you?
We had our, office holiday gathering, and as you saw, the fallout from maybe one of the most brutal and cruel white elephant exchanges in our history. So we're all kind of recovering and, trying to forgive each other.
I had a lovely time, and I appreciate being included again. I'm like your little orphan that gets invited every year. Me and our wonderful producer.
I know, Access, and you and Access do a lot for us, so we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate you as well. And I know the whole community does because of this wonderful content that we're bringing them. And unfortunately, we're starting kind of on a serious note with what's coming to this week's cover with Kim Weir.
Yes, and Kim is our go-to on all things marine life and conservancy and, bringing back the condors. And she's really she's tapped into all of that. And I wish she had good news, partly because we're getting tired of the bad news about this. But some months ago, you may recall, we had a story about how most likely the North Coast abalone fishery, the red abalone fishery, would probably be closed for another 10 years. And when that California Fish and Game Commission vote came down December 11th, that is what they did. So we first started shuttering these fisheries in 2017, and before the limits got lower, people were trying to cull fewer abalone from the waters because of a number of sort of ecological dominoes that were falling, and I'll get into that in a minute. But essentially what this means is do not expect to see any red abalone on North Coast tables until 2036. It's going to be a long time. And it is a really complex situation that has to do with global warming, has to do with, our weather, has to do with what I always think of it as, the old woman that swallowed the fly, and she swallowed the spider to catch the fly, etc., etc. Do they still teach that crazy song to kids?
I still remember it from my youth. I'm not sure if the kids get that now.
Looking back, I realize it's the stuff of nightmares. But
Absolutely.
Anyway. So essentially,
probably the root of my arachnophobia, to be honest. Honestly.
Yeah, I don't know what I would have had to swallow to send a spider down to get it. But anyway, when Kim went through and, talked to the folks who are making these decisions, she also does us the favor of going back and kind of recounting how we got here. So as she puts it, things began to unravel in August of 2011. So at that time, we were looking at toxic algae. So off the coast of Sonoma County, there was a toxic algae bloom, I guess is when it comes. And then that led to a massive die-off of marine life. So already we're in trouble. But then sea star wasting disease, formerly mysterious, now slightly less mysterious, because a group of researchers earlier this year figured out that they have identified the bacterium that is the source of the disease. This doesn't mean that we've cured it, of course. It doesn't mean we can necessarily turn it around on a dime. but it is a step anyway. We've identified what it is. But in any case, the sea star wasting disease, how does that connect to abalone? Well, in fact, 80% of the sea stars were wiped out. That's huge, right? 80%, especially when you think about the impact that the sea stars that look like they're just sitting there have on the rest of their ecosystem. So the sunflower starfish is an important part of this. The sunflower starfish, a monster of a thing, which can apparently get to the size of a car tire. The way that I would swim away from this, the speed at which I would swim away from such a thing. Anyway, it can have 24 arms when it's fully mature, the size of a car tire, and it can eat an abalone whole. Yeah, I can barely eat a piece of uni nigiri in a smooth and not embarrassing way at a sushi restaurant. This thing just eats it, spikes and all, right? So when that's gone, now we've got thriving sea urchins. And this is the purple sea urchin, who is just the worst, absolute wretch. And what it does is feast on the bull kelp and leave what are called urchin barrens. So bull kelp, what we call forests of bull kelp, which is just lovely. And there's a beautiful picture on the cover of the paper this week of a single sort of a flag of bull kelp. That plant, for one thing, it's being now devoured by the urchins, and also it needs these cool ocean temperatures, which we haven't been getting. The so-called, as she puts it, warm water blob. Hey, science. Warm water blob of 2014, and again with the names, Godzilla El Nino of 2015. We're still recovering from those impacts, right? Those took down 90% of the bull kelp, and that was a really hard loss. And there's been a lot of effort in trying to bring them back, but they just haven't bounced back at the speed that you'd hope. In spite of the ongoing moratorium on abalone fishing, it really has not recovered. We aren't seeing the progress that we were hoping to see. Not from the bull kelp, not from the abalone. It's tough out there for marine life. So the other thing too is that abalone is kind of like the panda of the sea, by which I mean the breeding is tough. So abalone take years to mature, right? These are not like bamboo that grows back, right? Or other creatures that reproduce quickly. They take years to mature, and their reproduction process is a little bit random. It might be the only thing worse than like Tinder. And what it is they send out the sperm and eggs into the water and hope it works out. Just as they say, putting it out there. And then, so it's, these things are all stacked against the red abalone. It's going to be a tough time in terms of collecting data, in terms of watching to see how they bounce back. I'm hoping they bounce back. I think we all are. There are a lot of cultural impacts to this as well. We think about this often as just a end user issue, but of course, everything, like dominoes, affects everything else in the ecosystem. And they're also culturally important for local tribes. Abalone is a really important part of the foodways and regalia, all kinds of artwork done. And so these are all things that are being impacted. And in looking at how these fisheries will hopefully be opened up again, there's going to be a lot of connecting with tribal folks and figuring out between scientists, tribal leaders, the Fish and Game. Like, these are all different agencies that are going to have to come together and hopefully in 10 years be able to make some sort of return to the fishery, but nothing is guaranteed, as you know.
And in both of these articles, the one thing that I've been meaning to ask is, did Kim comment that poaching is any kind of concern in.
I will say that I'm sure there, I'm sure people suck. Somebody is out there poaching, but we haven't really seen that many stories come over from Fish and Game about busting abalone poachers. That is, I remember when I first came to the Journal, that was a story that was big in the news, was abalone poaching, and that was when you could have some catch, I believe. But so far, we haven't heard a lot about that on our end.
So hopefully that's not part of the problem here.
Hopefully, but as you know, it's really hard to to quantify and to count on people making the best choices.
Perhaps now that the moratorium has extended, maybe people are starting to realize if they are participating that they're just making matters worse, and maybe they've decided to do something else.
I would imagine that somebody being told you can't have any of this, that feels more extreme than you can only have a little. And then sort of like speed limits, you think, oh, if they said this many, then I can really take that many.
And I guess that's why my question, because I remember hearing about it, and now I wasn't, so I was hoping that wasn't still part of the soup, so to speak.
Oh, if I get something about it, I will hit you up because we love to talk smack about poaching.
Ruins it for everybody all the time.
Oh, we hate it. We hate it so much.
So before we move on to some shinier stories, do you have anything that you would like to continue with as far as the cover?
I just really am appreciative of all the people who are working on this and just the transparency with which they've been, at least on our end, the way that they share information when Kim needs it. And I I have to say that this is a topic that if she wasn't covering it and explaining it, and if they were not sharing all this data and sharing all of the process, like, we've got a lot of scientists who are very busy and who have taken time to explain things so that we can share it with the public, understand it better for ourselves, and I just really appreciate all of that work too.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate Kim's devotion to this subject and bringing us the most accurate information.
Me too.
Well, I encourage everybody to pick up this week's journal and read the entire cover story for themselves. And again, thank you to Kim Weir for continuing to bring us this information. With that, we're going to switch over and we have a story from Cameron Barry, also talking about part of our community's beauty.
Yeah, Cameron Barry. Hello, Cameron Barry, new writer for the journal.
Welcome.
Always fun when we drag some new person into our web. It's just my favorite thing. So, Cameron came to us with a story about, as a big outdoor person and a person who loves park life, park things, all developments, new trails. You know those people who in your life are like, oh, they just opened up this other thing. They just opened up this new trail, or this bridge has been redone. And that person who knows all of that, I think that might be Cameron Barry. That might be the person. So he came to us with this really great story about Doug Kerr. When you're going in the parks and there are those like trail volunteers, the people that you run into, you can ask directions, you can ask them for suggestions. They can remind you of best practices while you're out in nature, stay on the trail, all of those things. Doug Kerr is in the Grove of Titans, and I kind of love his story. So this is a really wild time, and we're going to get into that more later, but I hear lots of people saying like they just feel very helpless, they don't know what to do. I like to hear the story of someone who has decided to devote themselves to a thing and Doug Kerr is your guy. So he is what's called a Titaneer, and he doesn't just go out to the woods to be a helper in the Grove of Titans when, every so often. He drives 300 miles from Healdsburg every month to volunteer. He says it's the only pleasant 300-mile drive in California. And he basically fell in love at first sight. He was on a tour, and the parks worker said, yeah, so we have this volunteer group, the Titaneers. And he was like, I'm in. He immediately just signed on. And the man was radicalized. So he comes in, he does the work, he does, he deals with people, he does trail maintenance, and he's just really super informed about everything from moss, lichens, salamanders, tiny invertebrates. Tiny invertebrates, my new jazz combo. And he basically just is the jack of all trades when you're walking around and you need help. He has even helped with a proposal because indeed somebody handed him a camera one day and was like, can you take our picture? And then the dude like dropped down to a knee and he's like, and now I'm in their love story. But I think I really appreciated Cameron talked to him about things like, of course, working on the wear and tear of the traffic, of having humans coming and walking through this natural environment that's so old and in some ways quite fragile still, despite its resilience. I think what was really something to me is that he feels hopeful. Like he doesn't see damage being done and feel like, oh, this is hopeless. Or he doesn't see the way that global warming is really affecting these trees and could have a devastating impact on them. What he says, I hate to think it, when it comes to like the redwood range die out that's possible. And this is dependent, boy, talk about the old woman that swallowed the fly. Apparently, the reduction in moisture and fog can affect the trees, and especially if fog disappears, if we lose the fog that is so much a part of the North Coast, that is going to hit the redwoods. And the Grove of Titans is one of the places that'll be like a last refuge. So as I said, he said, I hate to think about it, but his thing is, he's like, they're carbon sinks. These trees are basically healing some of the damage that we're doing to this planet. And as he puts it, they just keep reproducing themselves and continuing life seemingly forever. This is a kind of evidence-based optimism that I really appreciate. And his hope, he says, what gives me hope is that the people I talk to will become advocates. And what a great thing. Like, this is a guy who has devoted himself making these 300-mile drives to come. And I know somebody's going to say something about the carbon footprint, but listen, we all do what we do. He spends 10-hour days, whether it's rain or shine, on the trail, and just has decided to devote himself to these trees. And I think it's pretty beautiful. So I'm hoping that people will read this, appreciate Cameron Barry as a lovely writer, but also really appreciate that there might be a thing that's calling to them, and maybe it's time to answer it. Maybe it's time to set out and build your schedule around something that matters to you.
And that's going to give you purpose and make you feel a little bit more optimistic in this time that we're living through.
I mean, dude seems pretty happy.
I mean, I can't imagine spending your days in a redwood forest and not feeling a little closer to the divine. I mean, I don't know about every transplant in Humboldt County, but that was what brought me back home, was the first time I stepped foot into a redwood grove. And with that, Jennifer, we are going to shift in our last few minutes here to your story of what's coming to the table. And no spoilers, but it's delicious.
I have to tell you, normally I know this is ridiculous for me to say. I can keep a secret even though I am absolutely not keeping a secret this week. I was invited a few months ago, or was it 2 months ago, to come to something called Potato Club. I got this invitation and it said, first of all, there is no Potato Club. We don't speak about Potato Club. And there were lots of warnings about keeping Potato Club secret. But listen, you invited a journalist. I'm sorry. I spilled the Potato Club beans. And boy, mixing my
Were
metaphors right
you
there.
potato leaked it?
Oh my God, it was right there. How did I not see it? Oh my God. I'm going to be recovering from that for a while. But essentially, this woman, who shall remain nameless, had the genius idea to throw a potato party. Just baking a bunch of potatoes and inviting a bunch of people. She invited all women to this. Some that she knew really well, some that were maybe casual acquaintances, some people who knew each other for years, some people who'd never met before. And they all came to this thing for potato night, and they brought toppings. So I know this seems easy, right? You think, oh, potato toppings, easy. And it could be. And that's the genius of it. She was saying, like, the idea of getting everybody together. Like, we can't all go out to a restaurant because everybody's broke. And having a big group together, it's just a huge hassle in a restaurant. Having a party where you cook for everyone, madness. Just a whole chaotic explosion of your schedule. Even a potluck. She's like, there are some people who aren't going to attend because they are swamped. They got to come directly from work and they don't want to show up with a bag of chips. And as I confessed, I recently went to a potluck with donuts. In my defense, they were apple fritters.
Hey,
But
I showed up to a holiday party with beer, so
hey,
it happens.
it was a favorite beer amongst this staff. But this allows people to, okay, one woman showed up with a pot of homemade chili. She flexed on us all. It was delicious. Somebody else showed up, totally swamped for time, came with, I think, like a bag of shredded cheese. Somebody else brought chopped scallions, which chopped scallions, very low cost, but if you are not a person who does that for yourself, who cuts toppings for yourself fresh, let me tell you, it is a delight when someone else chops parsley, chops scallions, etc. When they do all that for you, you feel special. Somebody else brought toum. Have you had toum? This Lebanese, it looks like, is this a fancy butter? But it's very, very garlicky and salty. I never would have thought to put it on a potato. Now it's all I want on a potato. So good. But everybody had the option to invest a lot of time or not. Invest however much their budget allows for and just relax into potato night. As a hostess, it's not a lot of work. Granted, you probably have to, straighten up your living room, but it's not a big cooking task. It's you clean potatoes, you oil them, you bake them. You don't have to be futzing with them while they're in the oven. You're done. And then you just put them out and everybody brings their toppings and sits around and eats. Sitting around and eating is underrated. I don't have enough table settings and silverware to serve, 20 people at my home with a matching Martha Stewart everything. I do have the capacity to let people sit on cushions on the floor, on the couch, in random chairs, and around whatever table surfaces, and relax and chat with each other.
And this is a great way to have a potato bar party. So I want everybody to read your entire contribution here, and that's going to wrap up our time. We ran out of potato time.
Throw a potato party. It's vegan
Throw it.
friendly.
It's great. And the current edition of the North Coast Journal will be available on newsstands tomorrow. Pick up your copy, read it cover to cover, get that inspiration for your potato themed party. And of course, if you don't have time, you can find it online at northcoastjournal.com. I am Tanya Schrum. Thanks to Jennifer and all the contributors. And thanks for being with us and staying informed and supportive here in the North Coast.